So here we are on Saturday of Holy Week, and three questions, hopefully with three answers. The first question is: Friday to Sunday is not 3 days. It's more of a statement, isn't it, rather than a question. The next question we'll answer is: if Jesus is God, then how did he die when God, being eternal, cannot die? And then the final question that we'll ask is, well, what was Jesus doing between his death and resurrection? What was Jesus doing on Saturday, I suppose you could ask. So let's take this. So Jesus says in Matthew chapter 12, verse 40, he says this: "For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Okay, and we'll figure out what the heart of the earth is. Final question. So, Friday afternoon to Sunday morning isn't 3 days. It's not like after 3 days, will be like after 72 hours. It's definitely not 72 hours. Just over 40 hours, really. So, before we try and figure out, well, did he die on Thursday? Is the Bible wrong? Okay, let's turn to the book of Esther, okay, to find out if we can figure this out. So, in Esther chapter 4, verse 16, we read Esther saying this. She says, "Go, gather all the Jews to be found in Susa, and hold a fast on my behalf, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. Then I will go to the king." So she says, don't eat anything or drink anything for 3 days, night or day. Then I will go to the king. Then it's a few verses later, in Esther chapter 5, verse 1, we read this: "On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace in front of the king's quarters." She'd gone to see the king. She says, "Then I will go to the king." So she says, don't eat or drink anything for 3 days, night or day, and I'll go to the king. And then we read, on the third day, she went to see the king. So really, the Jews reckon time different to us. Their day goes from sunset to sunset. So Friday, when Jesus died, was 1 day, because it was before sunset. Saturday was the second day, so Saturday was a whole complete 24-hour day. And Sunday was the third day when he rose. So even though there were only a few hours of the Friday before sunset, that was counted as a day. And the Sunday was counted as a day also, even though that wasn't a full 24 hours. So scriptures, what do the scriptures say? Well, okay, there's Matthew chapter 16 verse 21, Matthew chapter 17 verse 23, Luke chapter 24 verses 7, 21 and 46, and 1 Corinthians 15 chapter 15 verse 4 all say that Jesus would be killed, and then on the third day he would rise from the dead, on the third day. And Sunday was the third day. Okay, get it? Okay, so we're not getting around it. That's just how the Jews worked it out. Different to us, okay? We change our, we start a new day at midnight. They do it at sunset. So, next question. If Jesus is God, this one's going to be a bit quicker. If Jesus is God, then how did he die? When God, being eternal, cannot die. So, when Jesus died on the cross, did God die? Quick answer, no. Okay, let's go get a bit more of an answer. Not a really full answer, but a bit more of an answer. So, it depends what we mean by death. Now, if we believe that this life is all we have, and not believe in life after death, then when we die, people believe like that, would have ceased to exist. But as we know, this is not correct, for we know that death is not the end. At our physical death, our physical body separates from our spiritual soul. So when Jesus died, we read in John 19 verse 30, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. His physical body died, but his spiritual soul did not. So when he said to the criminal on the cross, "Today I will be with you in paradise," he meant in spirit, not physically. So, quick answer there, God did not die on the cross. That was a really quick answer. There's far more I could have said about that. Okay, so third final question. What was Jesus doing between his death and resurrection? What was he doing? So, well, we know his physical body went to Joseph's tomb. We just looked at that. But what about his spiritual soul? Well, we know from a few moments ago that death separates our physical bodies from our spiritual souls. We know that before we were saved, we were dead in our transgressions. Paul says that in Ephesians 2, verses 1 and 2. So that means that we were separated from God. We're born in this state of death. And this is why Christ suffered on the cross, because it was this separation brought about by our sin, which he took upon himself. That was the agony that he was going through, that separation from God when he took our sin upon himself. Now, God did not create us to have our souls separated from our bodies. That was not how it's supposed to be. So not until death came into the world through Adam's fall were the soul, the spiritual soul and the physical body ripped apart. So what happens when the soul is separated from the body at death? Well, we read in the Psalms. Psalms are a wonderful place to find out about the Messiah. Psalm 16 verse 10 tells us this about the Messiah, Jesus. So it says this. And actually the whole of Psalm 16 is just absolutely amazing. We find out so much. So read Psalm 16. Psalm 16 verse 10 says, "For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol," or Hades, "or let your Holy One see corruption." So this is David foretelling, prophesying about the Messiah to come. So the Apostle Peter then uses David's psalm when he's given his sermon in Acts chapter 2, verse 29 to 31. So David is writing that the Messiah's soul will not be abandoned to Hades or Sheol, nor will his flesh see corruption. So up until Jesus, so what we take from this, that David knew this, and this is what would happen to all of his forebears. This is what was going to happen to him. That before Jesus' death and resurrection, that is what happened to everyone else when they died. The body decayed, and the soul was abandoned to Hades or Sheol. So that's Psalm 16, verse 10. But that didn't happen with the Messiah, with Jesus, with the Christ. So Sheol is where the souls went, the spiritual souls went, when the person died, before Jesus' resurrection. We'll get on to what happens after Jesus' resurrection in a moment. So those righteous people, Adam, Abraham, and Noah, and Samuel, and David, and even actually John the Baptist, because he sort of like was tagged on to the end of the Old Testament. So their souls went to Sheol, Hades. Now we also learn that Sheol is separated into two, and we have that sort of parable. It's not quite a parable. Remember of Lazarus when he goes into the bosom of Abraham, and then his that rich guy who owned the big property, who didn't have anything to do with him, is in the other part of Sheol, as Hades, where there's gnashing of teeth, and he says, "Oh, get Lazarus to go and tell my family not to be sinners, but to be righteous people, so they don't have to follow me." And obviously, Abraham goes, "That's not going to happen." So there's one side for the righteous who died before Christ's death, and the other side for the wicked who died before Christ's death. So this is pre-death and resurrection. If you died, or sorry, when you died, your soul will go to Sheol, but Sheol is separated into two, a side for the righteous and a side for the unrighteous. So now, jumping ahead quite a bit, post Christ's death and resurrection is that, well, the righteous, so the unrighteous still go into Sheol. They still go into Hades, awaiting the final judgment. We don't. We go to heaven. But I'm jumping ahead. We'll get to that in a few moments. So let's go back to the cross of Christ. Remember that Jesus said to the penitent thief on the cross that today you'll be with me in paradise. As paradise was also known as like the bosom of Abraham, because Abraham would come, Father Abraham would come and take you into Sheol, and you'd be in the bosom of Abraham if you were righteous in the good side of Sheol. That's how the Old Testament scriptures put it. So Jesus, following his death, remember what David said in Psalm 16, verse 10. What Jesus goes to Hades. He goes into Sheol. But remember, his body is not being, will see corruption. And so he goes and he releases the captives. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, David, John the Baptist, and all those others who were righteous, Noah and all the men and women who were righteous. And remember, he paid the price for them. He'd ransomed them from Hades, from Sheol. And again, in Psalm 49, verse 15, but God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. Okay, so the psalm is saying that God will redeem my soul. The price will be paid. Remember, Christ has paid the price so that my soul will be redeemed from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. So we're going to now be received. That Jesus is going to come and take those people and take them up into heaven now to dwell with God. But again, we'll get there in a few moments. So Jesus storms Hades, or Sheol, where the righteous were being kept. And after his resurrection, he brought them into heaven where God dwells. And this is what those Old Testament saints had longed for, the coming of the Messiah, their Redeemer, their Saviour. Remember, they were saved in exactly the same way that we today are. They were looking forward to the cross. We look back to the cross, but we're all looking to the cross. And Jesus, the Messiah, dying. Now we know fully, and because we've got it in our scriptures, they didn't know exactly how it was going to happen, but they knew it was going to happen. So now, post-resurrection, when the righteous die, Paul tells us that we depart to be with Christ in heaven. We do not enter Hades. We do not enter into Sheol. But obviously the unrighteous, that's where they still go. Now, there is so much more I could say, but that very quickly, maybe it wasn't very quickly, was what Jesus was doing on the Saturday, a few things he was doing. If you've got any questions about anything that I said, if you want me to go into a bit further or maybe find some more scriptures or things like that, then just ask by contacting me. So that's Saturday. Don't say nothing happened on Saturday. Quite a bit happened on a Saturday. It's all good news for us who are righteous in him. So take care and God bless.